Welcome back to another episode of STEM in Stilettos. This is your host, Zofia Morales, and today I am keeping it real with Dianna Fioravanti. And REAL does have an actual acronym behind it that we will dig into in a little bit. But if you have been striving to, or even struggling to create a supportive and empowering workplace culture while navigating the challenges of leadership in a male-dominated industry, or if you've wondered how to increase female representation in executive roles and drive success within your company, you have arrived at the right place today. Dianna is the president of Kuehne+Nagel Canada, where she leads 250 logistics professionals nationwide. She was appointed in 2022, and she became the company's first female president in Canada and has helped grow female executive representation from 15% to 50%. Yay, representative population. With more than 20 years of experience in logistics, insurance, sales, and risk management, Dianna has held senior leadership roles across Kuehne+Nagel North America, including presidents of Nakora NA and the CEO of Nakora and GFH Canada. Under her leadership, the company has earned multiple workplace and leadership awards, including Great Place to Work recognition and the 2025 Women of Inspiration Women in Power Award. Dianna holds credentials in political science, insurance, logistics, leadership, and serves as the executive sponsor for Canadian Women in Logistics Leadership, WIL, and is passionate about values-driven leadership, employee experience, and customer excellence. Outside of work, she enjoys golf, fitness, books, great food, and spending time with her husband, daughter, family, and friends. Welcome to the show today, Dianna.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I am super happy to be here with you today.
I am so thrilled to have you with me because I know many of us, especially early in our careers, set this goal of the C-suite, let's go get it. And then life happens and it becomes not as easy as we thought it was going to be. And there seem to be these invisible walls that get thrown up. And so I love talking to people who've navigated all of that. So tell us a little bit about how you made your way into the C-suite. I know you weren't born there.
No, not at all. And honestly, as a young girl, I don't think I would have ever fathomed that I would be here today. So it wasn't something that I always had a vision to do. I always knew I was passionate about leadership, and I seemed to always take a front row seat and leading people early on in my childhood when I was playing sports, in high school, and then heading into university, taking the lead on various projects, and then into the work world. But I believe that I was always glass half full. I was always focused on the next step. Where's that opportunity? Trying to do the best where I was. And as I was journeying through my career, I learned early on that relationships and networking were so important for me to continue not only learning from those that were older than me that had been there, but also those to help me navigate some of the barriers that we do face as women, but as people, not just gender specific in the corporate world. So I was very, I say lucky, but I think I spent a lot of time, I know I did, on really making those relationships that happen and nurturing those relationships throughout my career. And in my book, Flip the Switch, I talk a lot about partnership and how important that is to not only get through, but also navigate the unknown and the uncertain. Because I believe as humans, we weren't meant to walk this world alone. And so sometimes when you get to the top in a C-suite position, you are alone a lot. So having those partners alongside, and I've got an inner cabinet that I've built for many, many years that have kind of helped me through not only navigating personal challenges, but also through the professional world. But I
Yeah,
grew
well,
up
and
mostly in the insurance industry and was
yeah.
able to then step into logistics 4 years ago in leading Kuehne+Nagel. So it's been sort of a journey throughout those years.
Yeah, I love that you have this personal career cabinet, if you will, because I think as women, a lot of times, at least coming out of school, you're told, well, you need to do it yourself. It needs to be all you, baby. And that's not how the guys play the game.
No, no. And I think as women, we often feel like we are the ones who have to look after, we have to do, and don't necessarily aren't conditioned to ask for help. We're usually the ones that are helping.
Yeah.
And so that's where we get into some ruts. And so I had to learn how to do that. And because I was in sales, I sort of learned how to do that in a very, I think, sort of professional way, but also in a way to learn. So I was always asking questions, but it was about being curious. And through that, I was able to develop new skills, new relationships. And I'm also very good at watching and engaging and seeing how others are kind of navigating this world. And if, where they're making mistakes or where they're winning, how I can actually replicate some of that where it feels right for me to do.
Was there like an early moment, an early lesson where that was kind of brought home to you that, oh, you know what, other people do have these kinds of informal committees around them that are guiding and helping them?
I think that by watching a lot of my male colleagues in the boardroom, what I learned early on is how much they spoke up. I would often be sitting on the sideline and quiet, waiting for someone to ask me to speak or ask my opinion. And I realized early on that you can't wait for permission. And I share this a lot with those women that I mentor, and that we often are conditioned. And me growing up in an Italian background, in a Roman Catholic background, we were taught to sort of sit and mind your P's and Q's until
Yeah,
you're
be
asked,
seen and
right?
not heard. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Cinderella, you need to be chosen.
So we
Yeah.
wait, we do all the work and we wait to be chosen. And that is the problem, is that yes, you have to do the work, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to dive in. Sometimes you have to speak up and put your hand up. And that is how we've been able to have a lot of success in the organization I'm in today, is by really supporting and sponsoring more women to put their hand up, to speak up, to listen, lean back and understand where they're coming from so that we can create more space and really kind of change the dynamics in our organization to allow everyone to flourish. It doesn't matter what gender you are.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there are statistics out there that show the more women you put in leadership, actually, the better returns you get out of your company. And
Absolutely.
it just kills me that more companies don't recognize that and seek that out as a way
Mhm.
of improving what's going on in their companies.
It's that whole idea of diverse thought, and women bring different ideas and backgrounds, perceptions, empathy to the table. And so you need that diversity. And if we had all women at the table, it wouldn't be any good either. You need to
Exactly.
have that balance. And that's really been my goal. But more importantly, is to create the environment as a leader for people to be able to come to the table, get the skills they need, develop themselves in a place where they feel psychologically safe so that they can put their hand up when that time is right for them to continue moving and where that opportunity will be there.
With the women you've been working with, I'm sure you've noticed some maybe patterns that tend to be
Mhm.
common with women, ways in which the rules that we internalized growing up limit us in unconscious ways. What are some of the patterns that you've noticed?
So for me, there's three things, and one of them is the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Right. And I think growing up, you have, whether it's parents, whether it's friends at school, whether it's teachers, they have sort of created that picture in your mind of who you are. And so sometimes if it's a negative story, that carries through with you and you take it through into your adult life and you wonder why you ended up where you are or why things
Yeah.
are the way they are. And a lot of it is because your brain is speaking to you in a way and it's a false story. And so I like to go back to the beginning with women and say, what is that story going on in your mind? And part of the flip the switch in my book is around your body, mind, and spirit. How do you cleanse your mind of those negative thoughts? Who are you really? Your identity is so important to not only, who you are today, but who you're going to become.
Yeah.
So number one is the story you're telling yourself. And number two, I mentioned earlier, is stop asking for permission. A lot of women feel like they're getting stuck or they're not
Yeah.
moving. They don't know
Better
how
to
to get to that
ask for
next step.
forgiveness than permission.
Exactly. Men do it all the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think that's where learning how to trust yourself in the right circumstances to just take that step forward. Yes, you're going to fail, But that's usually how we learn. And then you learn quicker and you can move faster after that. And then, so once you stop asking for permission, then the third piece for me is how big can you dream? Who do you think you can become? So if you're telling yourself the right story and you stop asking for permission and you have a big dream, the chances are you're in a much better place to be able to achieve that. But if you don't think big, I mean, you're going to be limiting yourself. So you got to be able to stretch yourself in order to continue growing and to continue moving along the path to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to circle back to that story we tell ourselves because my husband had a setback the other day and he was getting down on himself and saying some things about himself that I know to not be true.
Mhm.
And I'm like, time out, time out. I understand you're having trouble telling the truth about yourself right now for legitimate psychological setback reasons. But if you're going to lie, at least lie supportively.
That's a good one. And you're right, it's not really gender specific. I mean, I mentor a lot of male leaders as well. And they grew up with whether it was parents, unfortunately, saying that they were no good or they will never achieve great things in life. And so they've got this negative story happening in their
Yeah,
minds that they don't necessarily share with people, but it holds them back,
yeah,
from being able to achieve what they want to achieve.
exactly. So you mentioned, and I love this statistic, that you changed executive team representation from 15% to 50%. What all needed to shift for that to happen? Because it's easy to go, oh, we're going to do this, but it tends to be harder in reality. What were some of the hurdles you ran into, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, what's interesting is we share the metric. And for me, the representation isn't a quota. It's really a leadership standard that every leader should have in having a balanced team. And so for me, that visibility created courage. So when I stepped in as a female CEO, very first, people saw different, right? And suddenly, women started believing what was possible because I
Yes.
came in and I was doing things differently than my predecessor, had a whole different flair, very focused on communication. And they're thinking this is not really what we were used to for years.
Yeah, yeah,
So
because
they
a lot of CEOs hold their cards pretty close to their chest.
Yes, and I'm very open and transparent, and that's really helped to build a lot of the trust in the organization. But I truly believe that my presence just in getting into this role helped to unlock a lot of opportunity for women around the country, which they flipped the switch on what was possible. What we were able to do was then redesign the table. So we didn't necessarily wait for women to put up their hand, but we have a women in logistics organization where succession planning, talent development, mentorship programs, all of those are very much alive in our organization. And to
And
help
very,
create,
very critical if you want to move up, because I think that's
yes,
another mistake that people make. It's like, I'm going to make myself irreplaceable. You are going
mhm.
to lock yourself into that job forever if you make yourself irreplaceable. You need to be replaceable by two or three different people on your team and show that you can bring people along behind you in order to move forward.
That is a great point. And as I hire vice presidents into my team, that is the first challenge I give them is saying, congratulations on the role. I mean, your first priority in year number one is going to start looking at your talent around the team and within the organization because we often do cross referrals of talent and to really find those people that could be your successors because we're not going to be looking in year 3 or year 4 when you're looking to move. In our organization, you tend to move every 3 to 4 years. So it's really important day one for you to start thinking that way so that people don't get locked into trying to hold their talent close so that they don't move anywhere else.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
exactly. Or worse yet, hide your talented team members under a bushel so no one steals them from you.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing we did was a lot of companies have mentorship programs or coaching, but we really tried to normalize sponsorship. So, advocacy in rooms where decisions get made where maybe they aren't there. When I'm not in the room, it's important to have male advocates that are sponsoring. If Dianna was here, I know here's what would probably
Right.
say, or here's what she's done in the past. This is probably where she'd want to head. And so people understanding, knowing, and a lot of that has to do with communication and being open in how you think and what you feel. so that I can also, as we bring women into the executive team, I'm very much wanting them to not only feel like they have a seat at the table, but know that they belong there.
Yeah.
And so I sponsor that. I sponsor their thoughts. I make sure that I hear from every single person on my team when we're having some tough conversations. There's a lot of people that are very vocal, but those that are quiet, I ask them, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah.
What's on your mind as we're having this dialogue? So that everybody feels like they speak. And once I do that enough, everybody now knows they just dive in whenever they have a chance
Yeah.
and they want to
Well,
share a
and
thought.
the quiet ones tend to be the thoughtful ones. They haven't been
Yes.
figuring out what they're going to say. They've been the ones who are looking at and digesting the information that's been put out there. And a lot of times your diamonds sit with the ones who are sitting very quietly on the edge of the table.
It is very true. Very true.
So we are up
Absolutely.
on our first break already. And I do like to give our listeners a little bit of thought homework over the break. So for a listener out there who's been joining in this, what would be a good thought exercise for them for the next couple of minutes around their career, their organization?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to think about who they have as an inner cabinet or who they can think about that has been as supportive, whether it's a cheerleader, advocate, who's challenged them to think, or who has been there for them when things were really down to remind them around the important things and the success that they've had to kind of bring them back up. Who is on your bench? Who are those surrounding you that you need to reach out to more in order to make certain decisions in your life?
All right, that sounds good. So spend a few minutes with your pen and paper, write down who's on your inner cabinet, who's your support system, and hang with us. We'll be right back from the break.
Oh, shout it loud, the wolf here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. Oh, no fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales. I'm back with the amazing and wonderful Dianna Fioravanti. And in the introduction, in the title, we mentioned that we were keeping it real. So tell us what real stands for in your world, Dianna.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that was really important to me early on was to sort of have a framework around how I lead. And so I not only keep myself honest, but I can share with others what has worked for me. And so, a really simple acronym that I've created was REAL, keeping it real, because it really sort of echoed a lot of what I do as a leader, but what I found to be very successful. And what that stands for is resiliency, being very resilient in your leadership, having empathy, and being very authentic, showing up as yourself every day, and also leading with the idea of creating a legacy. So that keep it real for me has been absolutely pivotal, and not only in my business life, but in my personal life. If you think about those four things, it's actually the foundation of what I believe creates trust everywhere you go.
I love that. I love that. So, how does the concept of keeping it real play in with having this informal cabinet of advisors? How do
Mhm.
you work those two concepts together? Now that we have our list of potential people.
Yes, absolutely. So I think is ensuring that you always get back up. So things aren't always going to be rosy. There's going to be speed bumps along the way. You may have a big challenge that you need to get overcome. And those that are the most successful have definitely learned that skill of resiliency, of getting back up again, failing forward, failing fast. And so those times in your life are very difficult if you're doing them by yourself, right? So having that support network is so important. And whether it was during a time that I went through a divorce, horrible custody battle with my daughter, various challenges in my leadership, I have always had a support network, and it could be various different people. And I know Michelle Obama calls it her a kitchen table. And a kitchen table growing up was often a place for me of trust. It was a place that had some really tough conversations with my parents when things weren't going so well, or some very fun times where we were laughing and enjoying a meal together. But that kitchen table for me is a place of trust. And I think about that when I think about inviting my inner cabinet to that table. They don't know each other. They don't necessarily sit at the table at the same time, but they get called on at various times in my life, depending on what I'm going through. And usually it's the toughest times where you're at a fork in the road, you're unsure where to go, and you need to know who to pull on. And sometimes people like to be in the comfort zone and feel good and always call on their cheerleader, but that may not be the right person to call at that time. It may be the challenger that may need to challenge you to try something different.
Yeah.
Don't always take the left hook. Maybe you need to go right this time in order to get to where you want to go, and remind you of what your dreams are and your aspirations and the skills that you've learned earlier in life. So when
Yeah.
it comes to the R and resilience, that partnership, that inner cabinet is so important.
And I love
Um,
that you mentioned that sometimes you want the person that is challenging, that takes the oblique angle. That's one of the traps that I've noticed with AI is it's so people pleasing that it actually gives you
yes.
terrible advice. And so I guess what
Yeah.
I would suggest is meet with the people that are challenging, that give you the oblique angles, and save the cheerleader for last after you've had a good hard look at what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to figure out what that timing is for you. But I think understanding who you need and the timing on that is really important. And that comes back to learning and knowing yourself. That self-awareness is critical. The empathy piece for me is really important as well, and developing that skill of listening to, and listening to not only listen, but to understand, and then to be able to act and execute on the information that you've heard. And that's where, whether it's in your personal life or as a leader, when people are opening up and sharing something with you, yes, sometimes they just want you to listen. But if it's in a professional world, a lot of times, if they're sharing something that's bothering them or that's negative, typically it's something that they need your help with to make change.
Yes.
And so if we're listening and then doing nothing with it, that's where trust erodes in an organization. And an example is employee engagement surveys. When
Mm,
people take the time to fill them out and they share things that aren't so rosy, it's important for the leadership team to be able to not only read through it and try to understand, but then possibly come back to the employees as a group and say, hey, we read this and here's what we think we're hearing. Here's a possible solution. Are we on the right track here?
yeah, is
And
this
we've
what
done
you
this.
guys meant
Yeah.
when you said this? That's always such a touchy area, right? I've been in large organizations where they send one around and I'm like, oh, here's my opportunity. And they're like, no, 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 don't say anything. You're going to get whacked. It's like, that's terrible. If you use your employee surveys as a way to weed out people who don't think exactly the way you do, you're creating a very toxic environment unintentionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the work that we've done over the last 4 years, we've really worked to create that safe space. And the way we've done that is I go from site to site and I listen and I sit in fireside chats with people, whether it's in warehouses or in our branch offices, so they get to know who I am as a person so they don't fear me. But what we did was we really tried to do as much as we could, at least the first year I was in, to make sure that they knew we were listening. And we've continued to do that year after year. We're not perfect and we can't do everything they want us to do. But where we do have control and where we can help them, we are definitely not only doing it, but I share at town halls. Every month I have a town hall. And I also share when I go to the branch or the warehouses. For example, we changed all the lighting outdoors in one of our warehouses because one of the women said she didn't feel safe walking out at 10 o'clock at night when it was dark
Sure.
because the lighting wasn't as bright as it could be. And so when we did that, when I went back to the warehouse, I asked the team, listen, are the lights bright enough? I know we went and changed the lights, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. So it was that reminder of, here's what you shared with us, here's what we did. Is it okay? Is
Yeah.
this good enough? Right?
Let's close that loop, right? Let's
Close
not
the loop.
assume it's
That's key.
fixed. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's really key. So that's the empathy part. And I think through your partnership or your inner cabinet, you could be bouncing ideas off of certain people that you know have a high degree of empathy in your inner cabinet to be able to share with you what some possible solutions could be, what you're hearing, how you could really showcase to your people around that you're not only listening, but now you're acting on that and you're executing.
Yeah. And I get the impression that there is sometimes a lag between hearing and then coming back with something. I think
Yes.
for myself, I want to jump in there and fix it straight away. But I think it's important to take a breath, look at the big picture, and see how it all plays together before you commit to something that maybe won't work long term.
Well, and as an example, in a very large organization where in one of our sites, we had the comment about the lighting outside. So then, of course, I come back and my question is, we have 27 sites across Canada.
Yeah.
What is the lighting like around all the other sites? Because if one site has a problem, it's possible it could be at other sites as well, right? So this is where the leg may be, because we're doing some further investigation into maybe like how rampant is this complaint? Could this be? So I think in every situation is different. Some things are very easy to fix. Other things may take more time because we want to do a good, thorough job, not just piecemeal or band-aid situation. We want to get to the root cause of something. But it also gives me a really good sense of our leadership. So if we've got certain pockets of people that are not feeling like they're being listened to, or they keep sharing information with their leader and nothing happens, this comes out on those surveys. And it's actually representative of the leader, not them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so it certainly helps us make better decisions, because sometimes that leader, we're seeing some performance issues, or we're seeing some other attitude outside that possibly the employee hasn't seen. So we're putting all these things together to make decisions on how we manage our leadership team. So I find it so helpful to get these surveys, and we now have the trust of the organization. Almost 100% of the people filled them out last year, and
Oh,
2,700
yay.
people. Yeah.
That is amazing.
It was, and that just goes to show that they know we're listening and that they are taking the time, because they're saying, well, things are happening. People they're making change. So that empathy piece is really important for me in all aspects of our business and leadership. And then the A is authenticity. And I don't know if you've probably seen this a lot, but where people are different at work or in boardrooms than they are outside of work. And I was always perplexed by that, because I thought, you were a lot of fun when we went out for dinner the other night with the team, but why are you being such a jerk in the boardroom?
Yeah.
People they had different masks, they were different. And so I've made it's been a real value of mine to show up as Dianna, whether you see me in the grocery store on a Saturday, or you see me in a boardroom, or you see me out in a warehouse. I may look a little different at all three occasions, but I'm still Dianna. And the topics may change, and the way that I speak, depending on who I'm talking to or what I'm talking about. But the essence of who I am, my personality, I like to have fun, I like to find joy, and I like to be very much on top of what's going on. So communication is important. So when I see people being different in different scenarios, I often share with them that, listen, everybody's watching you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a supervisor or you're the president of the company. There are eyes on you. And if you act differently and behave not aligned with what you're saying, this is going to become a problem, and trust is going to erode. So that authenticity piece is really important. And I think your inner cabinet can be a checkbox for you. They can kind of check you and say, yeah, you were really good in this situation. That's the Dianna that I normally see. But over here, this was a little different. What was going on with you that day that you seemed anxious or you seemed closed? And so that's where we can get to the real heart of things, if you have an inner cabinet that can kind of put you in your place or remind you of where you may be not as aligned with your identity
Not
as what you
fully
told.
yourself. Yeah. And I think there's always kind of a fine line around that, right? Because there are different aspects of you that are called upon in different situations more strongly than others.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of not losing track of who you are when you pull an aspect forward, I think. And I think that can be really hard for people, because it's easier to just put on this pretend suit of clothes than it is to go, oh, well, it's this firm aspect of Zofia I need to be bringing forward here as I'm putting this case forward. Later on in the meeting, when I'm interacting with someone else, it might be a more relaxed version of Zofia that comes forward.
But I had an example of that I actually thought about how I was going to handle, but we had a really big leadership summit last fall where people are used to me, lots of energy, very positive, getting up to kick off the summit. And about 2 hours before the summit started, I got a call that my dad was rushed to the hospital. He was okay, but he did have a heart attack. So
Yeah.
my mind was like all over the
All
place.
over, yeah.
And I was like, okay, right. And I was not even, I mean, I was in Vancouver and this was happening in Toronto. It's not like I could be there in 2 hours. So
No.
there was a lot of logistics that had to happen for me to get home, but I needed to kick off this event. I mean, that was what I needed to do. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not feeling like myself right now. I'm really upset, but I want to do a good job. So I didn't even plan it, but I started off by saying, keeping it real, authenticity is really important for me. And so I need to be very transparent with all of you. And I shared with them the news that I just got from my dad. And I said, so I want you to know sort of what's going on behind the scenes, because if I'm not as happy or if I have to leave later today, I want you to understand that, what's going on, that they don't wonder. And then all of a sudden there's rumors,
Why did she suddenly, disappear from the event and what's
yeah.
happening? Yeah.
So the feedback I got from that was unbelievable, Zofia. They said, Dianna, for you to be that transparent with us, we really appreciate it. And now we can support you. And I was almost in tears thinking about that, because that, for me, I didn't even think about needing their support. And yet, wow, yeah, I did actually. you know. So it's that trust in how you build it. And if you as a leader can be very open and authentic on days where you're not feeling your best, they understand and they will then lean in and they will support you. And honestly, it was probably one of our best summits we've ever had, because my leadership just leaned right in because they knew, okay, our leader needs help, needs support. So that authenticity piece is really, really important.
Excellent.
Mhm.
So we are up on our second break. In fact, we kind of blew through it. What would you recommend as a thought exercise over this break?
So I didn't get into legacy. So I want you to think about, a lot of people think about what your next step is rather than thinking about the impact you're leaving with the people that you're working with right today. So we talked about R.E.A.L. Now we're going to talk about L real quick, but just to be think about the role that you're in today, how are you impacting the people or influencing those around you in a positive way, so that when you leave, when you move on to your next thing, what is it that you're leaving behind to help them propel forward?
Yeah, exactly. Are you earning 9.97 an hour? Are you laying bricks or are you building a cathedral? What are you doing?
Exactly.
I love it. So hang with us. We'll be right back from the break.
Oh, shout it loud, the world here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales. I'm back with the amazing, wonderful Dianna Fioravanti. And we're fixing to talk about legacy. So how do we shift from the mindset of making 9.97 an hour to laying brick to actually building a cathedral that will shelter people in the years to come? That kind of mind shift isn't always an easy one.
It isn't an easy one, and I don't know whether it tends to come with age or experience, but I often share it because I think if you can make that shift earlier in your career or in your life, it's just going to be so much more fruitful. And I think you'll have a more successful career if you can actually think this way. And years ago, when I was in my 20s, I would always think about what is my next step. So if I was in a manager role, I wanted to become a director. When I was a director, I wanted to become a senior director. Then I wanted to become a VP. And so all of these thoughts were about me. They're about what I wanted to do. And along that journey, I was having the people that were reporting into me share, oh, Dianna, I really like how you did that. Or you really inspired me yesterday with what you shared at our conference. When you shared this story with me, Dianna, it really helped me overcome this issue that I have in lacking confidence and being able to put my head forward. And I started getting this feedback and thought, oh my gosh, I'm impacting people's lives. As my career continued, I started getting emails and letters around how things I had said 10 years ago now have impacted them, and here's where they are today. And so it got me thinking about, oh my gosh, I have impacted so many lives. How can I pull all of these together and really build a framework and think about how I'm impacting people today? And so when I came into this role in 2022, I thought, okay, how can I make some impactful change that really can live beyond Dianna? So it's never about one person when you're making some great change. It needs to be a ripple effect. How do you get people excited? How do you get that energy going? And so really shifting a culture of that was built in fear. It was very procedural. It was very focused on financials, P&L, as opposed to employee engagement, customer experience, driving that psychological safety. Those things don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And so it became my mission to attract people on my team that really were going to dive in, lean in, and who wanted the same thing, who wanted to make the same impact. And so today, 4 years later, I have this incredible executive team who have done not only financially, we've done very well in Canada within our organization, and we've grown our business, but we've gotten the very best employee engagement scores. And you talked about the awards that we won, but those are reflective of past work we've done. We're really focusing on how we continue to move that lever forward. And for me, I could step out of the organization tomorrow and I know that this is going to continue because it's such a living and breathing piece of our culture. So this is where I would challenge the audience to think about how are you impacting where you are today. If you're making $9.97 an hour, and I did that too, I worked at a grocery store for many years. And I'll tell you, that is how I got my first job in the insurance business because I was so friendly and I was talking to this older gentleman every day. He came in to buy, whether it was the loaf of bread or a head of lettuce on the way home from work. And he was the vice president of marketing for a big insurance company. And he said, I want you to come work with me when you graduated from university in June. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, well, I've been interviewing you for
what would I
years.
be doing?
But he was. So you never know who's watching what you're doing because you give good service and you're very social. People are going to want to bring you into their world somehow. And so I often say that if you can build that culture around you, it's going to bring good things to you.
Absolutely. Now, we've mentioned the council, the informal council. Do you invite people onto that, or are these people who have just been like, well, call me if you want to call, or how formal is that arrangement?
So the more, I think, I don't want to call it formal, but if you have, the more personal you get about it and sort of intentional about it, I think the better it's going to work for you. So whether you want to make it formal, but I think you got to make it very personal. And so, yes, I have actually in my book, I talk about how you build your cabinet. And typically having at least 8 to 10 people are usually the right number. I mean, it's not about having everybody on your LinkedIn list because then it's
Oh,
not
please.
personal anymore,
No,
right?
no, it's hundreds and thousands.
Yeah. So you want to make sure you keep your cabinet small enough that you can actually keep a relationship with them. And it may be, and however you do it, it may be whether you text them once a week, you have a phone call once a month, you get together with them for a coffee once a month. And depending on obviously geography, you may not be able to be in person. But I think that connection so that they know where you're at, what you're doing, and also how you can help them because you also grow by helping, coaching, and mentor other people as well. But I think it's very important you share with them that they are part of your inner cabinet and that there may be times where you may need to call on them and would they be open to supporting you in that way. And that's the formal part, is asking them to be part of your cabinet and what that means to you. And again, each person is going to play a different role. And so, for example, in my cabinet, there was a gentleman that was much older than I who unfortunately has passed away. And I remember saying to him, you are the greatest visionary I have ever worked with or met. And I would love to be able to call on you when I need to, when I need that big idea where I just can't go there, because he was great at brainstorming. And he's like, absolutely, Dianna, I would love to help you. And that's the key, is people naturally like to help others. And so the hardest thing we need to learn is how to ask for that help. And as soon as you ask and they agree, well, then it's open season to have those conversations and that dialogue. And so when he passed, that was a big hole in my inner cabinet, in my heart and in my inner cabinet. And so I needed to then find a replacement, someone. So I was on the hunt for that, and I have found a wonderful person. But because of having that type of person and thought process close to me for all these years, I'm dreaming big all the time, sometimes far outside of the galaxy.
You've become that person now.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So they become almost your teachers in a way, your supporters and your teachers. And so finding people that are different from you are also part of the plan that I talk about in Flip the Switch.
I love that. So, speaking of flip the switch, I know you brought a gift with you today for the listeners. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when I wrote the book Flip the Switch, it was really about how you can go from feeling stuck, playing it safe, to really unleashing yourself and your potential. And so I built a 6P model, and basically it takes you through what that model is. And the self-assessment, which is the gift that I'm going to everyone today, is you get to do a free self-assessment so you can see where you're at from the positioning of being able to make decisions. And a lot of people hesitate, they overthink. Women
Oh,
often do that.
I'm an overthinker from way back. I had a boss who sat me down one afternoon. He's like, "You've had a week. I need to know which way we need to go." I'm like, "But I
Yeah.
don't have all the data." He's like, "I recognize that. You will never have all the data. What's our best call based on what we got?" It's like, okay, big lesson here.
Uh, well, and you're not alone. I mean, this is rampant. And I think now, because there's so much data out there, we talked about AI earlier, and AI
Yeah.
is telling you everything you put in there is a great idea. And it's like, well, okay, which one's a better idea? It's not going to tell you. So
Because
so what,
it doesn't have a way to tell you a lot of times, because how good a decision is depends on the context of the decision and what are your priorities in the situation. And a
Mhm.
lot of times you haven't told the AI any of that. It has no basis on which to say which one's better.
Absolutely. And so the 6P model takes you through what you need to do, the work that you need to do on yourself in order to self lead through those decisions. Because I'm a big believer that you can't lead others unless you can lead yourself and you can make decisions for yourself. So the first P is person, body, mind, and spirit. We talked about getting rid of the story, the clutter, and then knowing what your purpose is in life, your passion. A lot of us as kids know what our passion is, but we lose it as we get older. We get into routine, we get focused on other people, other
We
things,
get
kids.
pragmatic about how we're working our way through
Yes.
the world. Yes.
Yes. So bringing your passion back. So I talk through that, having a playbook. So kind of knowing where you want to end up. And so what are the milestones to get you there? And then perseverance is the fifth P. And if you've got the other P's all lined up, persevering through those tough times is a lot easier. So if you know that your purpose is aligned, your person, mind, body, and spirit is clear, positive, your passion is there, you've got your playbook, persevering is much easier. But if you're missing any of those P's before, you're going to give up. You're going to
Yeah.
go stagnant. You're going to hesitate. You're going to overthink. You're not going to move forward. And the last P is partnership. We weren't meant to do it alone. So that's really going to give you that next big shift. So if you can do all the others, if you do it by yourself, that last push to really unleash yourself is going to be with your inner cabinet. So that's the 6 Ps. And so the self-assessment takes you through those 6.
I love
And then
that.
at the end, it
And
kind of gives you an idea of where you need to work, what you need to work on.
excellent. And in the show notes, we have put the link for the assessment. Go out there, get it, and take the insights that are being offered to you in this. It's amazing. We think we know ourselves until we do something like this, and it's like, oh, there's this glaring hole I was unaware of.
It's true. I mean, we all have them. And it changes throughout your life because depending on where you're at and what you're going through, it could be changing back and forth.
I love that.
Mhm.
So we are down to the end of our time here. What would be your final words of wisdom for a woman who's maybe found herself a little stagnated and is looking to revitalize her career and start moving things forward in the direction she wants things to go, as opposed to just going with the flow?
So I'm going to say something that's very different here, but I want to say get a little selfish because we as women tend to focus on others and we're very good at caregiving, focusing on other people's needs. We really got to focus on ourselves in order to have the energy and the fuel to help others. So I would say get to know who you are, what your identity really and truly is, how you want to show up. And the self-assessment will truly help you just to get thinking reflective of what opportunities could lie ahead. But yeah, selfish was always a bad word growing up. And
Yeah.
so I hate to use it, but at the same time, it really is about self-investment.
Yeah,
whether you're
well, and
selfish or self-investment.
and we've been beat up with selfish a lot of times when you go into a career-focused sort of phase in your life as a woman. That word gets bandied about a lot in terms of trying to control you and make you fit into the boxes that other people have for you in this world. And I guess I would like to point out that many of the things that career women are called selfish for, the guys are called enlightened self-interest. And what I would suggest is when someone calls you selfish, say, "Thank you, I'm learning."
There you go. Absolutely. Mm.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, Dianna. It has been a pleasure.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Zofia.
And thank you for investing the last 50 minutes or so with us on this conversation. I hope that it has brought insights to you, that it gives you some new directions and tools you can use in your own path as you move forward. I would love to hear from you. Drop me a comment below this video if you're over on YouTube, or shoot me a quick email to Zofia, Z-O-F-I-A, at steminstilettos.com. And until next week, go out, be bold, be beautiful, and be authentically you.